Right? It's been quite a while back now, but it's still amazing. And we will talk comic books with her about, all things comic books. Let's just be honest. You know what I love to talk about, folks. So, Shelby, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this with me. It's crazy out there, and you made time for me. Thank you, sir.
Oh, well, this is awesome. I'm so excited. I was telling you before starting that I pulled out my long box in the basement and I was going through like my favorite things ever. We were kind of discussing like bullet points on what we were gonna talk about, and like the pile just got bigger and bigger and heavier.
Oh yes. So what's going to happen is I'm going to win Shelby over, folks. So she'll come back and do this regularly. So we can keep going through these files. She's cut from such the same cloth. My first impression with Shelby was her love of, oh my gosh, was her love of Miller Daredevil.
Yes.
And you guys know, you guys that have been with me, you guys, it goes to my core is Miller Daredevil. So before we get too far down the rabbit hole though, Shelby, how did the comic book love all begin? When was little Shelby first getting exposed? What's the beginning of Shelby Loves Comics?
So, well, my grandfather loved painting. He loved Bob Ross, and I would go down to the basement, and he would be in like
spirit animal.
Oh, he was such a great guy. And I would go to the basement, and he would be in a cloud of cigarette smoke, and like he would like wade through it, and he'd be painting. And he said, like he would have me look through art catalogs and say, "Do you want to get some art supplies?" So through my grandfather's influence, I started taking classes on Saturdays at a museum, just doing like drawing. And I had a great teacher who said, what do you like? And I liked animation. So I grew up without any brothers. So like, I didn't really have anybody who took me to the corner store to like, or like read comic books or anything. Our thing was, dance, figure skating, like gymnastics, the kind of girly stuff. But at that drawing class, my teacher said, "Oh, all the animated shows that you like are based on comic books." So he was like, if you like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's based on a comic book. If you like X-Men, it's based on a comic book. So it was through that I was like, oh, okay, then let's see what this is about. So then when I was 16, I got a job at a comic book store, and that was really where everything
explodes. Like,
yeah.
Once you're in the store setting, everything changes, right?
That was exactly it. And I had a lot of really great and wacky coworkers who everybody liked something different. There was one guy who knew all the Kate books, the history of everything, and he would quiz us. He would be like, "What's the significance of the Detective Comics 27?" And I just stared at him. I was like, "I don't know." And he was like, "This is why you need to read."
See, that's an easy win for those of you at home. That's the first appearance of Batman. That's way too easy. Yeah, way too easy.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, so yeah, so when she was talking about Miller Daredevil, and for those of you who are catching this for the first time, or Shelby doesn't know, so I was just like this kid reader of just stuff, right? Actually, this is from Little Pops. It's the only one that survived, Shelby. No cover.
Cool.
No cover. So between the ages of 6 and 8, it's the only one that survives. Wow. To this day. I found it and put it in a bag and a board.
Oh, neat.
But when Batman 89 dropped, I had a friend, real close friend. He and his brother were into comics, and I read Dark Knight Returns. They said, "Oh, this isn't for kids. This is for adults. What are you talking about?" Dark Knight Returns. Loved it so much. Went to Walden Books, which don't exist anymore. It's a mall bookstore. They had graphic novels. They had Dark Knight Returns. I got Dark Knight Returns, and I got Year One, and I got Elektra Assassin.
Wow.
Those are the three. They were the three Frank Miller graphic novels. Read those three. He told me about Crisis on Infinite Earths. They didn't have it. So I read those first three. Now I'm totally hooked on Miller. Wow. I'm totally hooked on some of the different styles of storytelling and those kinds of things. Obviously, I'm totally in love with reading Batman because of the movie and that stuff.
Yeah.
And then that takes me down the rabbit hole of getting to Crisis And then it takes me, because that was like the reboot, right? So if you read Crisis, you can go forward and read everything. Even if you haven't read, decades of comic books, you could start at Crisis and just keep going, which is what happened.
Mhm.
And then, of course, Elektra Assassin was Daredevil, which led me to Daredevil and that his run, which was,
Yeah.
so now I'm completely hooked on the Marvel side too, because you have all the crossovers with Kingpin and Spider-Man and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
So, what is it about Miller's Daredevil that you think just transcends like this? Like what? Because for you to come out of the blue, you dropped it. I purposely did like spoiler reviews with people trying to help them understand that when Miller got total control and introduced
Yeah.
Elektra, that
Yeah.
comic book is nearly perfect.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
It's a
168 is incredible.
Oh my gosh. It's like it's the kind of thing I wish I could erase my memory and go back and read it for the first time again, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is spectacular. Like going from when Kingpin decides he's going to destroy Matt Murdock's life and he's going to do it very in like tiny steps, and he's going to drive him crazy, and it just begins so smart where like Daredevil isn't in his costume for
If you
so
haven't
many
read
of those issues.
Miller Daredevil, please come back to the video. Just go get a graphic novel. Go to your used bookstores. Get graphic novels of there's Vision Mark. I did a whole video on this. Marvel Visionaries. I'll put links in the description to my reviews that are spoilery. Elektra Saga is super cheap. It reprints a bunch of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're going to do Born Again, so you'll have hype on all this kind of stuff. But reality is, you need to read it for yourself. It's so good. But we're going to spoil it hardcore because when I get to 181, I'll tell Shelby something I don't think I've told anybody on the channel before. What my experience was when I read 181. So go ahead, Shelby.
Oh yeah. So Matt Murdock's secretary, she develops a drug problem, and she develops a drug problem because she's kind of hooked on this lifestyle, and she starts basically selling herself to get high, and then the only thing she has left is who Daredevil really is. So she sells his identity for a hit of coke, and this information makes its way all the way up the chain, and it finally lands on Kingpin's desk. And he does what any genius mob boss does. He decides he's going to eliminate anybody who knows it, so he's the only one who has this information. And he gives the kill order, and all of these people die. And then he decides he is going to destroy him in a very biblical way, and a very like Job being destroyed because God says you can't break his faith in me, and Satan says I can try. And he just destroys everything about Matt's life, and it starts very slowly with like all of a sudden his like debit card doesn't work, and he's like, what is this? And Kingpin finds out that his suspicions are confirmed because he's hearing about Daredevil kind of like beating up people in a way that is not characteristic for who he is. And he's like, I am getting him. It is him. And Daredevil starts to lose it, and he's like, yeah. And then the romance with Elektra. I was watching this great. You've probably seen it as interviews with Frank Miller when he was talking about how he developed this incredibly blisteringly passionate, just exciting electric romance with Elektra, because he said that a superhero deserves an operatic romance. A superhero, like, he was so bored with like, okay, Superman likes Lois Lane, fine, whatever. Although I will say the Batman story with Silver St. Cloud, the Marshall Rogers run, even though she's technically a normal person, I really liked that. I thought that was great. But what I love so much is that Miller says, no, a superhero deserves someone who operates at his level. And how like passionate and electrifying it is that these are two characters who are dressed in red, like hot, bright tomato, like bright, shocking red. And they fit together. Like he's a very devout Catholic, and he's devoted to both defending people and and justice, and he falls in love with someone who operates totally on the outside of the law, who's an assassin. And what makes Elektra so amazing is that she is not Catwoman. Catwoman steals jewels and all that stuff. It's like, no, Elektra is gonna kill you.
Yeah, she wastes no time because she kills people in issue 168, which is her first appearance. Like she kills people from. So it was
Yeah.
about a year later when issue 181 comes out.
Yeah.
It's on the cover. She's going to face off against Bullseye, who's been systematically elevated by Miller all along to become even deadlier and deadlier and trickier and trickier.
Yeah.
And I remember opening that, and I turned the page where he runs her through.
Oh, I was so upset.
And I
was so upset.
I'm going to admit it. They can take away my man card. I don't care. I teared. I didn't cry, but I teared up. I sat there and I couldn't believe
It was
this was happening. I'd spent I don't know how many months of my life, how many weeks of my life, just reading all of this, becoming attached, and I'm like, she's not superhuman. She's not a super soldier, and then she crawls.
She crawls to his house
and dies in his arms,
oh.
And you're just like, what? I don't. So when people are mad about the movie and how things have played out, this is why. So you have to understand,
right?
Oh my God, Vanessa and the Mole Men, and Kingpin loves this girl Vanessa, and she's like, I'm not going to be with you unless you stop being a horrible person. He's like, all right. And then his underlings are like upset that he's going to throw away his empire. So they kidnap his girlfriend and trap her in this like horrible place with these mole men. And you're like, I can't believe how dark, and yet.
And the building gets destroyed. Kingpin thinks that she's inside in death, pulls him back in, like literally like Michael Corleone style. Like I was out. I was cleaning this up. You did this.
Yeah.
And he becomes back in. And then when the story resumes and you see Vanessa survives, she doesn't even know where she is. She's not really an amnesia, but she's so messed up that she's basically like a homeless person wandering the streets as the story continues. And you're like, he takes us down this road where he's layering, like you said, perfect dialogue, because he's got cadences, like the vocabulary uses are very specific. Like certain characters wouldn't say certain types of words.
Right.
And then you have this sort of like, I hate the term like soap drama, but it's the characterizations of the levels of you keep building and stacking and you never let us go. He never lets us go. He's always got us by another emotion. He's not going to let you off the hook. You have to buy another comic book.
And then
you have to buy another comic book.
That's exactly it. And then even when the dialogue just skirts the almost cheesy film noir level, where when Murdoch finally figures out who it is, and he said something like, you shouldn't have signed it, or where you're like, oh, that's definitely like a Mickey Spillane type thing. It still works. Like it's still not too over the top. When I think he has a line about Elektra, it's like, she's been running through my head all night, and I've had plenty of practice, or whatever. And but it just works, and you just feel for everybody so much. Even the junkie who gets this whole horrible ball rolling, like he even makes her into a sympathetic character.
You're devastated. You don't want anything to happen to her because you feel like she's just trapped by her addiction.
Yeah.
Right? Videos I've done on this. In most of those videos, I try to give you some advice on how to get these economically, because some of these are very expensive. But there's Visionaries, Elektra Saga, there's trade paperbacks. Also, by the way, there is a Miller. He did a 5-part mini series called "A Man Without Fear."
Oh yeah.
Which is really, really an excellent way to catch up on Daredevil. Like if you just wanted kind of a very like a short synopsis. There you go. There's one of the Visionaries. One of the little
there's the
Born Again. Yeah, Born Again. Right. They really do sort of transcend beyond the scope of just comic book stuff. They really, really do. So
it's so true.
We could spend a whole hour just on Miller and Daredevil. And the art is fantastic, just the styles and things.
think there's the Visionaries that you were
Yeah,
just
there you go. There you go. You
talking
can find
about.
these again. Local comic shops will be happy when you dig through your comic book bins and ask for. Do you have some old Miller Daredevil in trade or something that's more economical? See what they have and go from there. Now, as I said, Shelby, that took me. Obviously, I mean, Batman was the gateway drug, but it took me down the Batman rabbit hole. I've told people, it says of all the collection that I did it as I didn't work on a comic shop. They wouldn't hire me, by the way. I tried to apply for comic shops, didn't get hired. I started my own flea market booth. Got like a flea
Oh,
market booth
cool.
instead of I couldn't afford a store, so I had a flea market booth. So for like 3-4 years, I was so into Batman. Batman was 50%. And everything else was the other 50%. That's how into Batman I was. I would literally just have like every crossover. It's insane. I still have so much of this stuff. I've been trying to downsize so much. It's just insane.
That's awesome.
And this is part of the reason why I ended up down the rabbit hole, because many other people, YouTubers are saying this too. I have to find good things to watch and good things to do because some of the modern content is not living up, right? Mm-hmm. So I started rewatching Batman animated series, and that's how I started doing my rewatches on Saturday morning cartoons. Saturday morning cartoons with Pops, X-Men animated, Batman animated, me just rewatching, me reacting, and I want to elaborate on that at some point. But Batman animated series, which would have been into your prime era of what you just love too, because you were talking about how, oh my gosh, these are comic books. What do you mean they're comic books, right? Batman animated, because X-Men was like literally like point to point. Like, you like this episode of X-Men, here's the comic books to read. You like this character in X-Men, here's the comic book to read. There was like a marketing strategy for them. They were like, well, we're going to rewrite this story so we can put Bishop in it, right? We're going to rewrite this story so we can highlight Omega Red, right? They did it on purpose. Batman, their creators were like, well, how about we take it, but then we kind of like make it its own mythos, its own. It's almost like a multiverse. It's almost like its own universe, because you have different representations of origins. I don't think anything ever was like, I never called anything blasphemous, but more importantly, they elevated characters. So Mr. Freeze was a cheeky, silly character, but you do Heart of Ice, and now he's like top notch, top tier, right? You do Clayface. Now everybody wants a Clayface villain. You do.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The Clayface one where I don't want to spoil that one because that's one of my all-time favorite episodes ever. But there's a genius episode where Clayface is the main villain and Robin is the hero that you are following. So it's a very Batman light episode, but it's focused almost totally on Robin, and he falls in love with this sweet girl, and unfortunately she's tied up in the Clayface world. And how it ends was so shocking to me. It was very much like the death sequence, like from a comic, like we were just talking about in like it was that shocking to me. And it's not, and I'm not giving away, it's not a death, it's not what it is. I'm just saying that I don't want to spoil it because you have to watch it, but
it was tragic on that scale, and I will get there at some point, folks. I've warned everyone they're all spoilers, because it's me reacting like a child, going, I can't believe how much fun I'm having rewatching. But what I wanted to present to you was like, I don't know if you've watched any recent Batman animated series. I know we talked a little bit about some of its inspirations, and we in our preparation for some of one of the comic books that you recommended, but the animation and the universe that they create is so beautiful and deep for a cartoon from 1992.
And then the choice to make the sky almost always red, it's always night. And then when they were airing it, they would air Superman after Batman, and Superman always had a blue sky. So when the Superman episodes started up, you're like, you could instantly tell by the color palette, oh, the bright sunny day, that's Metropolis. The red sky is Gotham. And it was such a smart design choice,
Well, on your list of comic books that you kind of, I want to say, I don't know if it was a highly recommend or that you just love. I don't know how you phrased it, but
highly recommend.
You included Mr. X, which I'm like, I so loved revisiting after seeing your video, because I read a couple issues, but more importantly, I was so hooked on, I think, exactly what you were saying about the film, the with the story, which tied into Batman, was
Yeah.
the architecture, the
Yes.
style, the
I know what you're saying.
cityscapes, the universe building. Look at that. That is completely ripped out of a Batman animated series episode right there.
And the design of Mr. X is, you can see. I'm sorry, and it's getting a reflection. I'm so bad at this.
You're fine. You're fine.
You can totally see the Mr. Freeze design that Paul Ravoche uses, because Paul Ravoche is working in animation, but this is 10 years before Batman comes out, and you can totally see Mr. Freeze in this, and the whole 20s future architecture. But here's an amazing panel. I gotta get this right on the camera.
Yeah, look at that. I'm gonna make this big, so just hold it. Just kind of hang with me while I figure out how to get over there and get you guys. So you guys understand this is exactly what inspired Batman animated series. Look at that. That is exactly the type of style, depth,
Look at that.
character
Look at
designs.
these great faces here. Like,
And look how different they are.
It's colored by the book was designed, covers and colored by Paul Ravoche, who was really one of the main architects behind the look of Batman the Animated Series, along with Bruce Timm. So Bruce Timm really designed the look of the main characters in Batman, but it was Paul Ravoche who did the world building that the animated series adopts. And we have the Canadians to thank for that, because it was the Canadians who were exposed to French and European comics in Canada a little bit earlier than the Americans were. So the writer Dean Motter and the Hernandez brothers, Los Hermanos Hernandez, Gilbert, Mario, and Jaime, they were able to buy European and French comic books in Canada earlier. So they were like, we should be doing more experimental stuff. We should be doing more, art direction, and really pushing the stylistic choices. So yeah, you have a lot of really beautiful graphic. It's so good.
And if you guys love Batman animated series, this is why we want to tie this in, is because this is a great comic book, a great graphic novel. It's not really in high demand either, so it's something, again, you should be able to find on a budget. It's not super, super long. It's not a title that was around for like 20 years or anything like that. I think it's probably for like $20, you probably can get everything. It's probably like for like $20, you probably can get every single Mr. X and immerse yourself in the universe, the story, and if anything else, just the universe. It's just one of those things that conceptually you feel like, gosh, why can't this get adapted into something? It just feels like an immersive universe that'd be so fun to play in.
And I mean, really, it's Dark City. Like, if you want to talk about what's the closest adaptation, it's Dark City.
And by the time people are watching this, we've already done our talk hard on Dark City. So Dark City, yeah, you just talk about Batman animated series and Dark City and just this whole concept of this noir life and unique characters. Like, you really hit the nail on the head too with that one panel where the two thugs look so different.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've probably made reference to that in my little spoilery reactions to an episode of like, oh man, they didn't have to, but these characters were so different, and you had this and you had this, because it's so much more interesting and believable. And when you translate that, Mr. X, and then into like Dark City, and you're like, oh my gosh, you had really kind of spun your wheels a little bit into the love of the architecture elements of it all. And after we kind of had some back and forth about that, I was looking at Mr. X a little different. I was like, wow, okay, holy cow. This is like cool storyboard stuff that I'm looking at now, like differently.
And
there's a few panels that are just like knock your socks off kind of thing when you start, if you're into that element of the aesthetics, folks, it is it's a really cool book. Since we didn't get a lot of Dark City content, you know what I mean, it kind of didn't go, and this is kind of a nice little surrogate.
Here's so in the back of this one, which amazingly this version is published by Warner Books, which I think is really appropriate, because Warner Films, when they made Bogart movies, they were the king of like, let's have cool character actors who have really interesting faces. But you can see the early concepts and some CD art that Paul Revouche did that just has that, you know, art deco feel to it. But if word to the wise, if you ever run into Jamie Hernandez at a convention, oh, here's another really great one. This is very much, sorry, Batman the Animated Series there.
Yeah, so that definitely, look at that skyline and the industrial look. Look at the lights. I mean, just perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me a little bit about the story because you kind of asked about it and kind of like walked into like a sore topic, so to speak. So if you could
yeah.
share what happened a little bit, if you don't mind.
Oh, I ran into him at a convention, and I was like, I love your work. I love like Love and Rockets. I love Mr. X. And when I said Mr. X, he was like, oh, and he got really kind of standoffish. And I'm so dumb. So like rather than picking up on the social cue of being like, oh, don't mention that, I was like, I really liked it. And I just kept going on and on. And then later, a friend of mine told me he was never paid for that, and then they like stole a bunch of his ideas. And then when the original publisher, which it wasn't Warner, it was like Vortex Comics, when they declared bankruptcy, and so when these guys were like, okay, cool, can we have the rights to Mr. X back? They were like, no, because in the bankruptcy deal, like all of our stuff got, you know, it's gone now. So it's a really, really sore subject for him. So if anyone's a fan and you see him at a convention, don't
have him sign a comic book. Don't go there. It's one of those little backstories of Mr. X. Well, I guess that'll probably eliminate the Mr. X movie plan that I just started playing out in my head as I was loving all the reason it. But I guess, you know, it's fine.
Dream casting.
Yeah. Don't do any dream casting. Good point. I don't want to go down a movie hole really because we got to keep it comic related. But we did talk hard. Isn't Dark City just a gem?
Oh my gosh, it's so cool. It's so interesting, and like when we were, one of the common points of contention that comes up now is like everything is a rehash and everything is like, let's just do a remake of XYZ. But I mean, to have filmmakers who really take a chance on very experimental things, and they try something new. I mean, you need to give people credit when they really delve into the super original territory.
Yeah.
You know,
didn't land. But yeah, we're going to talk about that at some point. So keep breaking that down. I'm never going to let go of a film like that. You had a lot of great comics that you kind of brought to light that I either have had and don't have anymore. Like Madman was one, and I'm like, I only have one Madman back. Actually, I went and had it in my hand today, and then I filed it and realized, crap, I'm going to talk to Shelby today. I filed it away because it has an Alex Ross cover.
Oh, does it? Oh, he got so many cool people. He got like Jack Kirby to do like the people who loved Madman were many and very cool. So Madman is 1994. I mean, he is an artist's artist. Like, you know, people in the industry loved working on this. So he really made a lot of friends, I think, with his personality, and Laura's also super nice.
So here's my big thing with Madman. If you guys want to know, my summary of Madman is, if you want to just have something that's just fun, you want a superhero thing and just have some fun, Madman could be for you.
Exactly. I mean, I think isn't it? It's kid friendly, right? I don't think
it's anything that's racy, really, or no. Like Bone is the other one. Jeff Smith's Bone is another one of those. Like they're just fun. I think they're kid friendly. I don't think there's anything racy or anything like that in them.
There's different language in it, and there's a really cool flip book. I don't know if you can see it, but in the corner,
in the bottom,
he dances. Sorry, you can't really tell on the camera, but there's a cool flip book.
Hold your graphic novels up so people can get a better look at like the design on them a little bit, and I'm going to make it bigger. It's definitely unique. I also will tell you too, if I were to go in a comic shop and I asked about Madman and they don't know what I'm talking about, it's definitely a litmus test of who you're dealing with.
And he
Um,
loves his sweet girlfriend.
mhm,
I don't know
mhm.
if you can hear my dog in the background.
We don't mind. Just add some realism to the show.
He's like, "Arr."
Um, yeah, it's. How would you sum up the general premise of Madman for folks? Hear the Shelby version
um,
first.
yeah, I think what I had kind of tried to do in the video was just say he's a really sweet Frankenstein monster who has a yo-yo. He loves his girlfriend and he likes David Bowie. And there's a whole cast of fun, weird, wild characters. Like there's a mad scientist and there's a band and there's kind of weird monsters. Um, oh, what's wrong, buddy? He's upset. But yeah, he dreams about his sweet girlfriend. He like writes her poetry, and at the same time, he's fighting crime and he's fighting monsters, and it's just fun, you know. It's campy, and you can tell he's probably looking at it himself. That's definitely
Yeah.
Mike.
Okay. There we go. Yeah. Campy.
Yeah, yeah. And then here's a shot of when he takes off his mask. So he's dead.
Yep. There you go. You get like an actual creature underneath what he actually is. You know, the dead version of himself. It's fun and different. Interesting. I'm actually shocked that no one's done any adaptation work with it or anything like that. Like it hasn't gone anywhere, and I'm not quite sure I know why. I think if I had to ask him, if I had Mike Allred, maybe I could ask like, what's the story? Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I wonder if he has like a story where something didn't go, or they had it worked out, or something. I don't really know. I don't really know. But he's a cool fighter. There is a fair amount of action as well in these. It's not like it's all just a bunch of silly camp. It's a fair amount of action, and I think we talked about it too with some of the other stuff we've loved, like fun characters, like interesting, different characters, not like a bunch of cookie cutter stuff. It's all very interesting, unique.
Yeah. Here's this crazy guy with this like unibrow, and he's like, you welcher. You know, it has some, you know, campy 50s language in it that I think is funny. He saves a guy by, you know, using his
slingshot. Look at that.
His slingshot.
Got a little slingshot. That's awesome.
So yeah.
So you credited a lot of your coworkers to find stuff like this.
Yeah, I did. And the guy who I eventually married has amazing taste. You have to talk to him because I think you guys would really hit it off. He knows a lot more than me. I know that you guys have similar taste. And he was the one who said, oh, if you like this, you know, read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. And if you like this, he recommended Miracle Man to me.
Oh my gosh, it's gold right there, baby. We had to come back around to that. We'll need a half hour for that because that's a special. Well, actually, we should do a whole stream just on Alan Moore stuff because Alan Moore is a unique. I always have like nicknames for him and nothing ever sticks. Like he's like the weird old guy that's eating bugs in Hellraiser, right?
Living on his mountain with like in his like
I know.
suit.
Yeah, it's like, you know, he transforms into a winged monster and flies away to write something else, and it kind of fits. I gotta be honest. He would have a name like Wicker Man or something. He would have some crazy name too, though. But all right, so show up that one. That was called The Dreamer.
So and then this was the first comic book that I was like, I really didn't understand what comic books could be. And this really brought me into Eisner's work, so I started to read some of the spirit. But so Eisner was really working at the beginning of the comic industry in general. And sorry about that. You know, you can see there's like no panels. It's very artistic.
It's 1937, right? I think it's
yeah.
The 30s for sure.
So he's got these beautiful, you know, floating panels. It's very cinematic. And I didn't realize that this was about the beginning of the comic book industry. So I was able to read it as its own story. And then
this predates pretty much of all of our capes, right? This predates all that kind of stuff. This is Eisner created, hence the reason there's an Eisner Award. This is the person that is
Yes.
laying the foundation for the foundation, right? So he is literally like creating an industry of saying, what if we were to illustrate these
Yeah.
stories? And for me, I think what Eisner did for me is it made me realize that there was a way, because I learned to read out of a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And I used comic books as a way to help encourage my kids and try to stimulate imagination and do different. One of them turned into an artist. He went to art school.
Oh.
And the Eisner stuff, which I don't think I have any left, I would love to try to maybe get an inexpensive graphic novel or something to just kind of revisit that feel.
Mm.
I love the Spirit. I love
Yeah.
Spirit, and I loved also I love the Shadow. I thought
Yeah.
those two comics were so freaking cool. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just, there's something interesting about the mystery and the intrigue and I don't know the groundedness. And I'm a Batman guy. You know what do you
Yeah.
want? It's all down my same lane. It's all down the same
Yeah.
lane. So
That's exactly it. And when you read about like so like Jack Kirby is in the book, but his name is changed to like Jack King, you know, because he's the king. And there's so many cool things. Like I guess it was common for them to be shook down by actual mafia guys. Like they would go into the studio and demand that they buy a certain product or whatever, and just really like harass them. When it was Kirby who was the shortest of the bunch, he
mhm.
would jump off of his seat and he would let him have it. He'd be like, "You guys get out of here! I don't want to see your face in here again." And he would scare him off, and that's
Well,
in the
he's a
book.
war hero.
Yeah,
He's a war hero. So Kirby was not taking any crap from
yeah.
anybody. It's like, look, if I came back from this war, do you think you scare me? I mean,
He's
the stories are legendary. Like this dude,
yeah.
we
He wasn't he in Patton's army?
yeah,
Like
like the stories are just incredible. Like you're like, this is like the man's man. This is the
yeah,
John Wayne before John Wayne. He just came in this little tiny Jewish body, and you're
yeah.
like, holy cow! What do you
Just
mean
yeah,
he did? Yeah, he stood up to like made men. Like, no, you don't belong here. You need to
yeah.
leave.
She's
You
like,
need
"I
to
want to
leave.
see your face in here again," and they're like, "All right."
Yeah.
It was just
So,
so cool.
because I think when we talk about Kirby, the one thing for me is he lived a life. So
Mm,
when he brought his work, not only did you have the work ethic element, but you also had like this um, wanting to do something, wanting to have purpose, wanting to have value, and
yeah,
things like that. Because he lived and worked through so many challenges. And sometimes when I read modern stuff, and I really do blame some of the computers. I really do blame the fact that we're not drawing as much by hand and a lot more stuff is done
sure.
on screens that it feels very disposable. It feels very uh replaceable, maybe is a better word for it too, by people who don't necessarily have that heavy, that gravity filled life experience of tragedy and
Yeah, that's
witnessing death and horror and chaos and whatever. And
yeah,
it comes in cycles. I can't explain Miller. I can't explain some other folks who don't necessarily have those on a resume.
yeah,
You get genius in all kinds and all shapes and stuff
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Well, actually, wasn't Miller wasn't he like robbed a couple times and it really frightened him? Like he thought he was gonna die, and that was one of the things that kind of affected him. I remember hearing about this that he was mugged in a really terrible way, and he was like really
Yeah,
really
love.
shooken up by
Yeah,
it. So it was like a
yeah,
near death experience. So hold on, sorry if
yeah.
I
And I
don't.
think that you're fine. You're fine. I'm not let's just cameos of dogs. It's okay. It's all
I
okay.
keep trying to I don't know. I keep trying to pick him up and calm him down. He just runs away. So anyway, sorry. Go
That's fair
ahead.
enough. Uh, so anyway, the link is in the description for Shelby's video. Tons of great stuff that's on her list. We can't even get through but pieces of it. Also want to try to have some sort of theme here. We talked about, some of the stuff I think is more mainstream, where something else that's very obscure, like a Mr. X, and
Mm,
something that's kind of like a hybrid, which is like Madman. And then we're going to contrast all of that with our love of Mike Mignola and
oh,
Hellboy and such. Because again, great characters. You
yeah,
feel like maybe it's been released because I have to be honest, I don't have a massive experience with Hellboy. He just got away from me.
There's a
But
lot.
I would
There's so
love to
much.
go to the very beginning and see. Oh,
I hope you just
oh,
calm.
look, it's a little Yorkie something.
I had taken him out. I had taken him out before this so that he wouldn't need to go during this, and he's just.
Well, it's winter. He's got a little sweater on.
I know. It's like 0, so I got him in his
Well,
little.
how old is he?
He's 14. He's an old
Oh, the old
man.
man needs a sweater. The old man needs a sweater. Look at
I
that. Look
know.
at that little fella. Hey, buddy. How you doing, buddy? Look,
He's a
you're
good
perked up. What a good boy.
boy.
What a good boy.
He's a
Oh
good.
yeah, mine would be going bonkers right now if you started baby talking on my oldest one, he's like that too, and he's got a little sweater on. Then I have the other two that are all feisty. They'd go bonkers for baby talk. So, um, yeah, I know Hellboy. So here I am, Mr. Buttoned Up and whatever, and keep a PG-13 show, and I'm talking about all this sweet stuff and how family friendly Madman is, and I also recommend Hellboy
Yeah.
because it's freaking great, and it's got great characters and great
Mhm.
stories. It's sort of like sci-fi and
Mhm.
fantasy and action and magic and just cool violence and stuff we
Yeah.
probably shouldn't like, but we do. And I don't know, Shelby, what do you think? I don't even know what to tell you. I love it.
I think he's one of the most interesting artists. I loved watching his work. Um, so I came to his work through Hellboy first, and then I went like retroactively, and it was so fun, like reading his Batgirl stuff, and then like laying it all out chronologically and watching him arrive at the look that he's known for now, which is Hellboy, and watching him gradually take away things piece by piece and to get at the essence of what makes a figure, what makes the shadow, what makes the form, and watching him just edit his art and get more and more like crisp and blocky and designy was like, it's so cool watching an artist kind of like figure it out. But Hellboy is just fun, and I remember reading an interview with him where they were like, so why did you come up with Hellboy? And he said, because I like drawing monsters, I don't like drawing people. He doesn't like drawing faces and eyes, like all the stuff that I think typical artists like a lot of times when you watch an artist's work, they begin with the face, with a human face. It's just so common. But he doesn't like that. He likes drawing, fish and lizards and monsters. And he's like, well, then I just want to draw that stuff all the time. So if I make it about, kind of delving into mythology and delving into different, cryptozoology, he gets to do all of that and then frame it within kind of a cop drama-ish thing. But yeah, I really liked it a lot. I thought it was fun. I have not read all of BPRD. There's so much. So I've only read like kind of story arcs. And then I remember when the movie came out, I was in art school. I was living in New York, and a friend of mine who had gone as Hellboy to Halloween was like, "We have to go see
Mm.
it." And I remember really, really liking it. I know that he hated it. He was upset. He was like, "This isn't the thing that I like." I didn't mind it. I think because I wasn't so tied to a vision of Hellboy. Like it didn't bother me seeing different versions of it. Um, but yeah, so I recommend The Corpse. I think that's a great one. The Amazing Screw-On Head is a great one. Oh
Well,
man,
Seeds of Destruction is kind of like the birthplace of where everything just kind of
yeah,
starts. Like you can just kind of. So again, I'm the cliche. I got it for all of you diehard. I understand. Yeah. Gotham by Gaslight.
yeah,
It was my entry point. So I'm
yeah.
like, what am I looking at here? Who is this? Like,
What is this?
this is so good. Holy cow. And then, of
Yeah.
course, he did other Batman books as well. And then he did, I know this again, I know it's cliche. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I will not take it personal, but you guys can. And by the way, Roy Thomas wrote it, so it's not my fault.
Oh, right time.
He did the comic book adaptation for Bram Stoker's Dracula, the movie that
Yes,
came out.
that's right.
So when that dropped, I was like, "Gosh, Magnolia is freaking great!
Yeah.
What is this guy working on?" And it was one of those names that just it's odd enough that you could just kind of remember it. You know, I mean, maybe I pronounced it wrong or I didn't know how to spell it, or what, but I knew who
Yeah.
this guy was. So when Hellboy dropped, I think he did John Byrne. I think John Byrne. Chat, you guys will be blowing this up on the premiere. I'm sure when it premieres, you guys will be correcting me, but I'm pretty sure that he worked with Byrne
That sounds
pretty early in the process.
yeah.
And I was like,
I
well,
think
you
you're
mean
right
John
about
Byrne's on it? Oh, well,
yeah.
John Byrne's on it. I'm definitely in. And so I'm like, okay, hold on. And then as it evolved, and again, I'm in, I'm out, I've got pieces of things like you. This stuff has gone on for, oh my gosh, it's the 90s, it's mid 90s. So you're
Yeah.
talking almost 30 years, at least 25 solid stuff. So there's a ton of Hellboy content.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's stuff that's great. I'm sure there's stuff that's just average or whatever, but it's fun stuff. He also has a real good track record of just doing some fun, interesting, dynamic covers. So
Yes.
long list of just interesting
yeah.
cover work on some different things. Probably do a whole photo gallery of slides of just showing cool
Yeah.
magnolia colors. Yeah. So now, no, it's stuff we wanted to recommend some more stuff that
Mhm.
is good, different, right? We want to throw some different stuff at you. So I had Shelby on for that. I want to do that. And with that, we want to get to the end with Shelby. We want to ask, what does Shelby read now? How do you navigate? Because there's a lot of division over modern comics, and now the indie comics is kind of like divert. When Shelby and I talk about indie comics,
Mhm.
we mean everything that we grew up on with indie comics, which were like, you know, Love and Rockets and Ninja Turtles, and this stuff was the indie comics. Now we say indie comics, we're like, well, that stuff is over here now. Indie comics now is self-publishing, and maybe there's a little tiny publisher here and there, but indie comics, it's so different.
Yeah.
What are you reading? What are you enjoying right now? What's some of the things, the modern era that you are still got your finger on?
So I follow artists that I really like. So I really like Daniel Warren Johnson, and I really like Leo Romero. He did a fantastic comic book with Dark Horse, and it was written by Gerard Way, called The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys. I think he's fantastic, and I'm so glad that he's doing more mainstream Marvel and DC stuff, because he really he deserves it. I think he's great. He did a backup story in Batman recently that was really good. I really like Matteo Scalera. I think he's a fabulous artist. I really like Sean Murphy's work. So I tend to follow whatever artists I like. I kind of follow what they do, even if like I can't follow the story. Like maybe I'm not a huge fan of the writer. I'll read it anyway because I love their stuff. So so for example, I really like Gigi Cavanago, and he's on Mark Millar's Magic Order. And sometimes it's not that I dislike Mark Millar. He writes a lot. He writes a lot of stuff. Sometimes the story gets a little dark for me, but I follow it anyway because I think Gigi is a genius. And I really like, I just had one. I hate when this happens. Like it's right here and then it kind of disappears. Leo Romero, Matteo Scalera, Daniel Warren Johnson.
Well, she'll email us so we can make sure we can talk about it. So we're gonna get her to come back, right, folks? We're gonna get her to come back. So we'll talk more about them and more recommend, because we want to give you guys a dose. I mean, look, I hate on stuff as much as the next guy because I have to be honest with you, but I want to juxtapose that with stuff I think is also good, and also why I think certain things are bad. Like if I think this stuff is good, when I'm bagging on something, it's not without some sort of like context. I'm not just, I'm just throwing stuff. No, listen, I'm trying to add, it's a context to the whole bucket of things, right? So
I got it.
right,
I like it's a comic called Headlopper by
no idea what that
Andrew
is.
McLean.
Headlopper.
Yeah, it's like a kind of Conan the Barbarian type thing,
Well,
but it's done in
stuff.
like a very cartoony. And Mike did a cover for this artist last year, and it looked really good.
Cool. Very
So,
cool.
yeah.
Very cool. So that's so awesome. How is not comic book related really at all? How is the YouTubing experience been for you now? Because when I first, I don't know, did you come on one of my streams, or we saw on Zach's? I don't know where we crossed paths first, and it was like, yeah, like 50 or 50 people or something. I was like, who is Shelby? Like, what's happening? And as I'm trying to like listen or whatever, that's when the Daredevil thing happened. And you guys weren't even talking about comic books. You just dropped it on in like it was like,
hey, that's funny.
Maybe you were talking with Gray or something about it or whatever. It was just like something I would do. You're like, you're saying something, but it was like, yeah, Miller Daredevil, but you just kept going, and I just went,
yeah, maybe it was great. It was because just recently I read the Bill Sienkiewicz Elektra comic book where he did all that kind of gorgeous painting. And I just remember being so struck by it. It was probably in my mind. So I probably took the opportunity to even talk about it, even if it wasn't relevant. I don't know. But yeah, YouTube has been it's been really fun to just talk about things that I really like. And I did it at the behest of a friend who was like, oh, you should just do it and don't think about it. Just if you want to have fun with YouTube, then just start and don't think about it too much. It's been really fun. I've really enjoyed doing these radio shows. I've really enjoyed kind of just getting to pal around with people like yourself, and it's really cool being able to connect with people who kind of get where your headspace is at.
We're just off. I say I'm off by about 30 degrees. It's usually what I say. I'm off. I'm not off enough to be like, I've never been like the cosplayer. Nothing against cosplayers. I've never been like, I'm not really into like the hero worship of these people. I'm always like a little bit leery of like, don't meet your hero. Like I've never met Frank, and I have to be honest, I've always been leery of, if I meet Frank, I'm like, how do I meet Frank on a day I know he's not having a bad day?
Yeah.
I want a fair shake in meeting Frank. Like I want a fair shake that someone hasn't messed him up for the day.
Yeah.
Because he needs to understand that what he's done got me to here. You know, it's something like that. Where I've met many others that are fine, but yeah, I think we're off. But we're off by 30 degrees. Is what that's my take. So,
sure.
Folks, listen. This is Comics Talk. We are cruising right along with our little different type of approach to the format, recording it and then putting it out here as a premiere for you guys, because I enjoy in real time. Again, I can't always be part of the chat in premiere, but I try to, and it lets me kind of have a good feel for what someone would want to say back to us as we're talking about different things. I think it's also more interesting than maybe just the comment section where people don't say something. But if they have things they want to talk about, they'll let us know. They'll correct the things that I've said wrong, which is almost certain. And we can definitely throw and heap more praise and love at Shelby. You guys want to subscribe? She's great. We're talking about music and stuff like that. She's just been such a blessing in my music playlist cycle of life right now. Tons of comic experiences and reading habits and stuff like this I love tapping into. It's been great to have her on with us. Thank you for being with me and doing this. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. It's been awesome. Really, really liked it. Thank you.
Folks, some of the stuff's in the chat, in the description, all that kind of stuff. So free. You guys know all of subscribe, bells, whistles, all that kind of stuff. I'm not, you do what you can do. Thank you so much for watching. I am Pops. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you.
Someone has mixed an Amazing Spider-Man in with the Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man series. This will not stand.
My favorite quality about Pops is that
someone has mixed an Amazing Spider-Man in with the Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man series. This will not stand.
My favorite quality about Pops is that he's incredibly honest. At least you always know where you stand with Pops. So I like that about him. He's not passive aggressive. He's not sneaky that way. He'll give it to you straight down both barrels.